Hello. So, we would like to continue the presentations. We are now in the second session, and we want to get insights into municipal strategies and practices on food system transformation. We have 3 presentations, 2 in person and a video, and then we have also the time to discuss. But after this session, we also have the lunch break. So there's 1 hour to get some food and continue discussing. So I'm proud to present you our next speaker, Lidón Martrat. She is a political scientist with a master's degree in public management. She worked in international corporations from 2000 to 2020, so more than 2 decades experience. Yes, and we will today have insights from Metropolitan strategies for sustainable food from our hosting town, from Barcelona. So, Lidón, it's the floor, and we are really interested in your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us. I will do my presentation in Catalan, if you don't mind. As you have translation, the slides are in English, so I hope you will have no problem to follow my presentation. Thank you. Com estava dient, gràcies per convidar-nos a mi i al Pla Estratègic Metropolità.
Thank you very much for inviting us, me, and the strategic plan of Barcelona after the inspiring talks that we have heard this morning. We'll try to provide a context related to the reality of food policies, not only from the perspective of the city of Barcelona, but also from a metropolitan perspective. And I would like to start by explaining the reasons behind this metropolitan context. As you have already guessed from the previous presentations, food policies cannot be limited to a geographic framework, just a geographic framework of a city, but we need metropolitan perspectives that go beyond relating the city to food production and to work this concept from a transversal perspective between the different levels of the administration. And it's therefore very important to have this metropolitan focus on food policies. This is why I'm not only talking about food policies of the city of Barcelona, but from a metropolitan perspective. And I would like to speak from a public administration perspective. How do we coordinate different policies between different administrative levels? And this is a challenge that we can present here in a very humble way to tell you what we are trying to build, because everything is quite recent, although our trajectory as the city of Barcelona is quite long. So it's very important to relate consumption with food production, for many of the reasons that have been mentioned before. I won't dwell on this. And therefore, from the perspective of Barcelona, metropolitan city, we are working from an office that I will introduce later, a joint office between the Municipality of Barcelona, the regional government, the Generalitat of Catalonia, Climate Action and Rural Agenda, and the Metropolitan Strategic Plan of Barcelona, which is a public-private association related to the Municipality of Barcelona, working for the development from a metropolitan region of Barcelona, the local development of the region, and many subjects, including food and feeding systems, and a section of the Generalitat promoting Catalan products. The strategic framework in which these food policies are being considered from these administrations and this joint office, of which I'm the coordinator, is sustainable food. And today we've been speaking about agroecology, which is one of the branches of the sustainable food system. And when we speak about sustainable food, we speak about sustainability from 3 different perspectives: good for the planet, good for people, and good for the territory, which means sustainability from a social perspective, food systems which are accessible to everyone. And when Enric Tello and Gustavo Doc were talking about weakest points of the chain, we have also to consider people who have become vulnerable due to this system, and they have difficulties accessing food, sustainable food. Therefore, when we say that sustainable food is good for people, we are referring to accessibility, feeding, and health. So healthy food, good for the planet. We are talking about healthy and sustainable food production, as sustainable as possible, seasonality, ecology, trade circuits, and also prevention of losses and food wastes, and also change in the diet to go to plant-based diets, respecting our planet and increasing vegetal protein, and good for the territory. All this has to be sustainable from an economic perspective for the whole of the population, and especially for the most vulnerable links of our chain. Within this framework of sustainable food and within this metropolitan geographic framework, different institutions which are involved in the process have different working strategies, and through the office which I coordinate, we try to generate synergies among the different strategies from a metropolitan city level, from a country perspective as well. When I speak about country, I'm referring to Catalonia, and to maximize the impact of these policies through this coordination. On the one hand, we have the Municipality of Barcelona. Last year, approved the food strategy of the city of Barcelona, the food charter of the Metropolitan region of Barcelona, and here you see the timeline. And on the other hand, the Metropolitan strategy of Barcelona, which I will explain later on. They work on the food charter of the Metropolitan region within the strategic plan of Barcelona, with a specific perspective on food. And from the Catalan government back in 2021, the strategic food plan in Catalonia was approved. All this has a long trajectory. Back in 2015, we signed the Milan Urban Food Policies Pact. 250 cities agree on implementing sustainable food practices, and in all these steps, you can take a look at the different steps of the strategy. Also, the strategy, let me start by talking about the Barcelona strategy, and then I will present the food charter of the metropolitan area and the metropolitan strategic plan of Barcelona, and within each one of these steps, which are the highlight projects and what is the role played by our office within these projects. Here on the screen, you can take a look at the different challenges posed by the food strategy of Barcelona, which are challenges that have been mentioned today already, from the lack of accessibility to sustainable and healthy food, lack of soil, lack of support for farmers, also the need to improve the distribution and trading systems of our product, and what is the role played by markets. This has been mentioned before, and I would like to dwell a little bit on this idea and the work that has been done in order to transform the reality of these markets that have been mentioned before. So these are more or less the numbers, so you can take a look at the process of the food strategy of the city of Barcelona. It has been a process with lots of participation, with all the agents that have participated in the city ecosystem, the number of meetings that we have organized. And also it's important to point to the fact that this strategy is not a strategy from the administration, the Municipality of Barcelona, but rather a strategy of the city. So we wanted to integrate the different contributions coming from all the entities, from the farmers, the trade unions who have been present in all the working sessions, and now with the creation of the city agreement for a sustainable food system. We want to provide more space of governance and to follow up the different activities that have been implemented from the strategy. What is the vision presented by the strategy of the city of Barcelona? I won't read it, among other things, because time is going by very quickly, but we want to transform the food system towards more sustainable models. And within this vision, we explain what do we understand by sustainable food systems with the three vectors that I have explained before: good for people, good for the planet, and good for the territory, introducing environmental, social, and economic sustainability also. This strategy is also framed within 9 strategic goals, and they are all related to increasing the amount of proximity seasonal products coming from organic farming, which are offered in the city of Barcelona, and also to support small and medium-sized companies through projects of joint commercial actions that I will explain later on, reducing food waste and generating systems in order to make these foods more accessible. You can take a look at each one of the goals. I won't explain each one of the 9 goals. I think it's rather interesting that we center ourselves in the projects that have come from this strategy and joint work, and which are being developed so far. Let me just tell you that 54 lines of actions have come up and 265 initiatives. And here you will find some examples of the projects that have been promoted so far. Before, I was showing you this timeline very quickly to tell you that we started back in 2015 with Milan Urban Food Policies Pact, membership of Barcelona, which meant in 2021 a very important step forward in order to place urban food policies at the heart of our municipal policies. And here in Catalonia, not many years ago, there was not a tradition of working on agricultural policies from the cities, from the regional governments, and the rest of the country. Yes, they were working from the perspective of production and proximity, but the cities, until recently, they had not had this perspective. So Barcelona is not a food-producing city, although we have the privileged area of Collserola, areas surrounding the city, such as the agro park of El Llobregat, feeding us. We're not a producing city, but cities that from a global perspective have more than 50% of the global population consuming 70% of foods. These food policies are necessary and they have their say, although until recently there was not an area of food policies. For example, there is an area, a commissioner and a Houman team working on food policies at the university, at the Municipality of Barcelona. And this was thanks to the fact that once we entered into the Milan Pact, Barcelona wanted to host the summit of the Milan Pact, which happens every year. It was a political will, presenting resources and a human team to present food policies from the Municipality of Barcelona. 2021, we were working to host the forum, but also to create this project, which sounds very pompous, but the aim was to implement policies in order for Barcelona to become the world capital of sustainable foods, not only welcoming the forum, but also through the year celebrating activities around sustainable foods, introducing the maximum number of actors, promoting projects of food policies, and one of the main facts is the elaboration of this strategy with all the agents of the ecosystem. Therefore, some of the action plans of these projects come from this previous work that we've been doing. Just to mention a few, the project called Terra Pagesa, Farming Land. We've been working with the majority trade union made by farmers, aimed at all the farmers of Catalonia, not only those belonging to the trade union, in order to establish a logistics system supporting the trading of products coming directly from farms to the shops of the city. It's not the final consumer. There are many initiatives based on the final consumer, but municipal markets and neighborhood shops, etc. So this is a logistics center with a marketplace where these shops can order directly, and this project, which is called Farming Land from the logistics center, is managing the orders and the last mile distribution in the city of Barcelona. It was a project that within the seminars since 2018 we've been working on them, and thanks to several workshops organized by the city of Barcelona, we came up with the need. The farmers didn't know how to distribute their products and how to sell their products to the city. And this project wants to solve this problem, trading products from the conventional area and organic. It's in its pilot phase. There's there are 20 products so far, and 20 products between neighborhood places in the city, and the idea is expanding with the support of the Municipality of Barcelona. It's a clear example of coordination of policies. Started with the support of the Municipality of Barcelona, and then the Catalan government joined, the Diputación of Barcelona, and the Metropolitan area of Barcelona. So this is a project with all the institutions are involved with the agricultural proximity. Another one is green commerce of the municipal markets of Barcelona. What Gustavo said, it's true. The producers used to sell their products there, and this is not today's reality. We have a privileged network. Very few cities in Europe have 40 municipal markets, such as the city of Barcelona, and we thought that this had to be taken into account in order to promote a change in the market and also to increase the volume of sustainable products within these markets. And the idea was to define 3 different types of products: ecological products, local, proximity. When we speak about proximity, we're thinking about Catalonia, and coming from a short circuit that is coming directly from the farmers. So 2,000 stands of the municipal markets of Barcelona were involved, and we analyzed the percentage of the type of product. And we also established some thresholds. If you had set threshold for a set product, you were qualified as a green commerce, receiving support, making it more visible or helping you to introduce your product. 600 stands from the municipal market. It's a very complex system. The ecosystem and the culture of the people who are the owners of these market stands is different. They have to earn their bread. And they say, people are asking for mangoes, I will have mangoes. We have to work from the perspective of consumption. And we are working in this gradual change. And from this program then, and thanks to the promotion of the joint office that I have mentioned and that I'm coordinating, we're working in parallel in order to take a look at the municipal stands, which are emptying themselves, to see how to make them accessible for producers so they can occupy these empty stands. I think this is the way to go. It's slow, and long term, but I think that we can be closer to municipal markets and then to have the presence of these producers.
Molt important amb la
Then there's another very important project that we've led with schools entitled More Sustainable Food Canteens. The project aims at supporting food canteens to transform their menu. Well, if you put it this way, it seems easy. Nonetheless, it's quite complex. You need to engage all the school community. As we said before, public procurement is a key leverage point. Nonetheless, even if you have this leverage, unless you support cooks, waiters, and all the school community, it's not going to be an easy path. And if there's no link with producers, with growers, the problem will be even more complex, right? So the project aims at supporting the school community holistically, not through only a couple of workshops, right? You need like 4 academic years to ensure the transformation of food canteens and to ensure the availability of proximity and season product. Now we are in the process of connecting the schools with growers, with producers. Where there is a will, there is a way, right? So if there's a will, we need to make sure that schools get in touch with the commercialization pathways available. Last, Barcelona City Council, and now I'm speaking from a public procurement perspective. In Barcelona City Council, well, we have competences in public procurement only for kindergarten municipal schools, whereas for primary and secondary schools, the competencies are on the Catalan government side. Now, Barcelona City Council has approved a public procurement regulation, which is legally binding, and this regulation includes a percentage of compulsory ecological proximity seasonal product for kindergarten schools. Of course, all this has been possible in cooperation with representatives from social services departments, the school community. Let me give you an example. In the guideline, for example, we have banned the purchase of sugars and ultra-processed products, but this has not been fully accepted in elderly centers. How are you gonna, get rid of sugar in elderly centers? So you need to work little by little. Every time you pass any regulation, you need to bear in mind the realities behind, right, the regulation you pass. Now, from a metropolitan perspective, because I focus my presentation on Barcelona city, now from a metropolitan perspective, there's a metropolitan program, and Barcelona was appointed World Capital of Sustainable Food, and we have promoted the Charter of Sustainable Food of the Barcelona metropolitan area. And the Charter wants to define basic principles in order to define a sustainable food production system and to establish aims, goals in order to attain such sustainable system in Barcelona metropolitan area. So before launching strategies, it's important to be aligned, to speak the same language and to commit with the principles on which we want to work. And also it's important to define the relevant stakeholders based on the multiple helix. That includes public representatives, the media, civil society organizations, private companies, and of course universities and research centers. So we need to bundle all stakeholders and work all together towards a common framework in order to support and raise awareness about the need to promote a sustainable food system, reinforce initiatives, and establishing coordination mechanisms between the initiatives that are working down this line in order to develop synergies and scale up the positive impacts. Let me give you a specific example. Out of all the agents of this multiple helix, we have engaged more than 100 stakeholders, and we have set up a series of regulations regarding what each agent can do in order to contribute to a more sustainable food system. There's one guideline for schools, one for restaurants, etc. And on this framework, we did define a governance structure that includes the follow-up to the projects and the different synergies between the stakeholders. This happened during 2021, and it's work in progress. Now, in the process, last year, and in the framework of the Barcelona Metropolitan Strategic Plan, we have defined the strategic plan of the metropolitan area. The process entitled Barcelona Tomorrow, which defines the Barcelona of the future, the Barcelona of 2030, in different areas: mobility, housing, culture, etc. And of course, this includes a chapter on food. The structure of the Barcelona Tomorrow plan, well, the plan is structured by missions, and there's a specific mission with a specific indicator, and this comes along with objectives, with levers to attain such indicators. And later on in the tree, you cannot see it here because here we have only the levers, but of course levers come along with specific actions. In the case of food, and after a long process of brainstorming and focus grouping, we define a food mission. By 2030, the diet of metropolitan inhabitants should be based on local food, at least the 60%. And this indicator has been promoted by different organizations and institutions. This is the indicator that we are going to focus on from now on. So, on the one hand side, Barcelona City Council has a city strategy. The Catalan government has a country program or plan. The metropolitan area has also committed towards a vision and a mission. In Barcelona, thanks to the world capital, well, one of the results of this world capitality was to meet different administrations and deciding to set up a single window office to promote projects in the field. So if Barcelona City Council wants to regulate public procurement, we only have the capacity to do so in a very limited framework. But if we ally with the Catalan government, well, the Catalan government is promoting a public procurement bill that is of national application and can reinforce the mandate of Barcelona City Council. So this is the effort that we are working on between these four public administrations and one private company, PRODECA, in order to join efforts, in order to transform the food system and maximize the impact of our policies. We are a team of 6 led by myself. We have kicked off our office in February the 1st, so we are brand new. And well, I would like to share with you our mission. Our mission is to articulate the strategies, resources, and knowledge, and promoting coordination mechanisms in order to push forward projects that are framed in the sustainable food domain and that allow us to join or define synergies and reach a higher impact. We have set up some action lines. We are already working on the implementation of a few projects. The first work line, and probably the most relevant one, has to do with connecting the urban domain with the rural domain. There's a public administration that has the necessary competences to regulate on the field, And now it's about bringing these two worlds closer. Now we are working on what we call twinning projects between schools and growers, producers, or between restaurants and growers. All these projects are in the process of being conceptualized, and we want to work with different stakeholders. Now, the project that I told you about of Barcelona City Council, well, there's a group of schools that want to transform their schools. Now they want to come up with projects that allow us to make the commercialization of proximity and seasonable products easier. And we need to promote incentives. The same applies to the restoration. Now, we're working with youth also to conceptualize a project entitled It's All About Cooking, in the line of bringing the rural domain and the urban domain closer, because we don't cook anymore, and the youth who leave from their parents don't cook anymore, and they buy far too much pre-cooked food, etc. So we need to bring technology on board also so that the youth feel engaged, so that they can obtain recipes, etc. I'm not going to take any more of your time in this area. It's also important to promote food education. The change of mindset is very important, and the promotion of education in order to promote educational programs and making sustainable food a cross-cutting topic. We need to work at the educational level and also in order to include food in the national academic curriculum. And what else? Out of the projects that I mentioned before, like the Farmerland one, the office has a relevant role in terms of doing the follow-up of the project. And one of the main efforts that we are carrying out has to do with filling the empty marketplaces. We want to work with different stakeholders and with the city council in order to offer these municipal stores, which are now empty, now the right to a sufficient and healthy nutrition. We are working with social rights departments, both at the municipal and national level, in order to promote a work line that combines the pocket cards project for those who are granted with public grants, and we want to connect or bond these cards, these cash cards, offered to vulnerable populations with specific sales points. As I said before, we've been working only for 1 month and a half, so we are in the process of defining the process. Again, not an easy task, because when there's a social services user that is granted a cash card, they tend to go to big and cheapest supermarket. So we need to work on incentives down this line. Now, we believe that the regulation is very important. If you have the privilege to work with different administrative levels, it's very important to have an impact there. And for us, as I said before, public procurement is key. As I said before, Barcelona City Council has approved a regulation, a legally binding regulation on public procurement, but it's limited to the municipality. Now, thankfully, the Catalan government is working on a global public procurement bill that will affect all goods and services. And now the Catalan government is also working on a Catalan bill for food. In the office, we have had the opportunity to contribute to the drafting of the bill, especially in its public procurement chapter. So again, this is very immature as a project, but we hope that this will be a change lever. Now, to conclude, the last work axis we consider to be fundamental is communication. We need to win the cultural narrative when we speak about food. We need to raise awareness about the importance of nutrition, and if the narrative is offered widely from different public administrations. It gains a stamina and strength. So we are working on the development of this joint narrative, and we hope that in our lifespan we are capable of articulating narratives around healthy and sustainable nutrition that contributes to the transformation of the food system. This is me. Thank you very much, and I will be very pleased to open a debate with you.
Thank you, Lidón. Really inspiring, and I know that there are many interesting questions that we can discuss later. But we will go to the next speaker, which is actually a video presentation from Carthage. Carthage is one of the cities that are participating in the Edible City Network, and they worked also on a master plan. And well, the city is much smaller than Barcelona, but we will share some insights how this happened in Carthage, which is a city nearby Tunis, the big Tunis. And we have also people from Tunis here in the conference, so although maybe we cannot ask the online presentation speakers, but we have Lamia and Latifa with us from Tunis, so from Carthage, then we can discuss this. Yes, so the presentation is from Madame Hayet, Bayoudh. She's the mayor of Carthage. She's involved in this master planning process, and she leads the so-called city team in Carthage. And the scientific advisor, Houman, who is an soil ecologist, which worked on this master planning process.
I will start by thanking the organizers of the second international conference held by the EDICIT-NET network in partnership with the University of Barcelona, which, according to some historians, was founded around 230 before Christ by the Carthaginian Hamilcar Barca, father of the famous Hannibal. At that time, Carthage still dominated the whole west.
Nevelina, if you don't mind, we also could switch to the next presentation and then figure out this.
Slide, please. Today, Carthage is a small city in the northern suburbs of the capital, Tunis. It covers barely 600.
So maybe we have time for a short question. I was wondering how you organized your master planning process in Barcelona. How was the participation of local people? ¿Cómo participaron la gente de Barcelona en el proceso?
A Barcelona vam establir un grup motor dins l'Ajuntament que va amb una secretaria tècnica que va organitzar el procés participatiu. Llavors hi van haver sessions plenàries, per una banda, on es van convidar a tots els agents rellevants de la ciutat que tenen a veure amb el sistema alimentari.
Invited all the relevant stakeholders from all the supply chain, production, commercialization, health, education, trade, producers. And we organized sectorial work groups to work on production, commercialization, social and sustainable food systems. If I recall correctly, we organized 7 sectorial meetings with a drafting committee, that came up with a first draft of the document, and in the City Council we have an online citizens participation platform. The proposal was uploaded to the platform, and then we allowed citizens to participate, of course.
To the next speaker, and then we have a larger discussion. Nat, you are, yeah, well, I'm proud to present you Natalie. Natalie Keene is originally from Australia, and she's agroecologist. She lives in Norway, and she works as a district farmer in the inner city of Oslo. And she is one of the winners of the last year award, at the Sidnet Award, and she will give us insights from Oslo. Okay. Sorry. Maybe we continue our discussion. Is there any question from you, urgent for Lidón? Please come up and maybe speak loud, because they are busy with the technical stuff. You can come here and speak loud if you want. Yeah? Your question. Did I understand well? You have a question? Yeah?
You. There are two questions here.
Yeah.
Here and there. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, please. I have audition problems, so it's better with the micro.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So very interesting talk. I was wondering, in the slide of challenges, there is one point that says concentration of power within the food system. So I was wondering if this includes supermarkets as well. Is there any way or strategy to work with supermarkets?
Al repte, the challenge include different parts of the chain, but yes, supermarkets are included, and also the big enterprises that control the seeds, for example. Yeah, and in the commercialization part of the chain, it includes big supermarkets. There are different models of supermarkets. We are talking about big supermarkets, yes.
Okay. Another question I have is, one of the points was to improve the resilience of the food system. And I was wondering if this includes also to try to recover circular economy practices that were happening before and now we have lost. Like this thing of giving livestock wastes from other sources instead of grains that it was mentioned before.
Yes, it is. It is. De fet, hi ha projectes, bueno, és que hi ha molts projectes que no he mencionat.
Actually, I have skipped many projects. I have chosen what I believe to be the most relevant ones. But of course, there's a project on promoting agroecology and regenerative practices. Of course, we want to support, I mean, not like we want to, we are going to support such practices through the strategic plan. And of course, recirculating food waste. Of course, the strategy is more focused on preventing food waste. But once food waste is there, we have set up strategies to recirculate such food waste. And there are two specific projects down this line, one led by an entity entitled Espigulados, a Catalan NGO that aims at reducing food waste and redirects food waste to social entities when food waste is there. And then Mercabarna, there's what we call the food bank. All operators are obliged to bring all the products that are not aesthetically, let's say, sound, and offer them for free to social entities.
Fly shortly to Oslo. What is growing in Old Oslo? Nat, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, everybody. I would really like to hear from our colleagues in Carthage, so before lunch too, so I'll try and rush through some of these slides. I do very practical work in Old Oslo, which is a part of the bigger Oslo municipality. I'm a community development worker and an agroecologist, and you might have noticed I'm also Australian. So let's just take a bit of a step back, a quick step back, and look at the bigger picture. Norway does have a strategy for urban agriculture, as does the larger Oslo municipality, and it's about practical, climate-adapted, climate-mitigating strategies for smaller-scale projects. In the district of Old Oslo, we don't have a specific strategy for urban agriculture itself. Instead, we've built it into our other strategies, our strategic plan and our climate and environment strategy. So there, that means we've committed to, or we've got policies around using urban agriculture, urban growing, to improve our meeting places, our parks, and to give meaningful employment to young people. And of course, to doing better solutions for growing, not so much waste, more climate adaptation and climate mitigation in our smaller growing projects. We want to bring food, the idea of growing food to our residents and connect our young people, kids, young adults, with how food is grown. Out of these approaches or policies, there became the need for a position for somebody to lead this, practically hands-on, and I've got the honour of that position. So I'm the district farmer, and here I am in front of a growing box, like a growing bed with lots of mushrooms on a street that is closed to cars. So here's Oslo. If you've never seen it before, that's it. It's 18 districts, and the district of Old Oslo is right in the centre. This is a map of, I guess, a surveyed map done by the bigger municipality, those higher up than me, on urban agriculture projects within the city. Let's dive into Old Oslo. So this is us right in the inner city, and we've got a really built up inner city area, lots of polluted soil. We measure, I guess we do soil tests, that's what you say, in our kindergartens and in our parks. It's all really polluted. So we've got to find better solutions for growing, or more innovative solutions for growing, and we do that. Within our residents, our population of Old Oslo, there is relatively, if we compare it nationwide, relatively high unemployment. Amongst youth, we have the sort of highest dropout rate of high school across the country. So about 60 to 65% of our students finish high school, which is fantastic, but nationally it's over 80%. We have overcrowding in family apartments, but we've also got the highest amount of people living in one-person households, one-person apartments in Norway. Mm-hmm. So we've got, at the same time, this overcrowding, and then at the same time, this isolation. So we're trying to activate the streets with events around urban agroecology, basically, and getting youth into employment. We've got politicians, staff, and engaged residents, and we've also got some really nice parks. They are nice. and people are happy with them according to the surveys. I work really closely with the park manager. We've got one park manager. She rules them all, and she's wonderful and very open to me doing random things and other people. I'm building on the work of Helena Gullis, who is here today, building on her work in Old Oslo. So one of the other things that I get to do, apart from working in the parks, working with the community groups in those parks that are growing, is manage the green grants. Our little part of Oslo has 100,000 euros offered to not just urban agriculture projects, but to other green projects, say recycling, sustainable transport and things, but most of the money is given to people who want to grow their own food, be it in public spaces or in private spaces in courtyards behind their apartment blocks, in groups, or in their own family. So we support that fully. These grants are open not only to private individuals, but also businesses, cafes, things like this. And these photos show an institution. Well, it's 5 institutions that are actually municipal institutions. And they are a aged care home, a day centre for disabled and severely disabled, and a residency also for other people with supported living. So it's a supported living residency, also a cafe and an art centre for people. Here they had a massive grass area, just massive, and the people that were in wheelchairs and with A-frames and things with difficult mobility issues, they couldn't get out there. There was nowhere to sit. There was nothing really for them to do. No bushes or trees, just grass. So with these green funds, they've made pathways for people to get out there. We've made wicking beds, so with the water reservoir in the base, wicking beds that are also accessible by wheelchairs, made a greenhouse and planted lots of fruit trees. And that was just done last year. One of the other big things that I do is work with the kindergartens. We've got over 60 kindergartens in Old Oslo. A bit under half is run by the district itself, by the council itself, and the rest of them are private. There's a few of them that don't have an outdoor area. They might be in an apartment or in a space just surrounded by cement. But I work with over 30 of them, over half of these kindergartens. And I work directly with the teachers and the leaders there on expanding their outdoor areas, greening their outdoor areas. So fruit trees, berry bushes. In the last 2 years, we've planted over 200 fruit trees and berry bushes in these kindergartens and built dozens of kitchen gardens. And I work directly with those teachers that like doing it. Not all the teachers like gardening. And this winter, because what do? Winter is so long. As somebody with a 100% job in urban agriculture in Norway, people are like, what do you even do in winter? So I write. I've just co-written a calendar for the kindergartens to hang on their wall with tips. What do they do each month? Where do they get what they need to do? How do they prepare for upcoming tasks in the garden? That sort of thing. And the other really big part of my job is the young city farmers, the unge bybønder. So this project started in 2019 just as a 3-month pilot project. They really quickly realised that employing someone like me for 3 months is making my life really difficult. So it's a late start. I don't want a late start. Don't give us a late start. We need to start early. Our season is very short. And now we're in our 4th season this year. So the project is continually being financed by different programs from the municipality. At first we were financed by a program to increase car-free areas in our city. Now we're funded by area lift of the inner city. I provide about 30 jobs each year for young adults, but I try and make it interesting for them. So these 30 jobs are just a small part of what our district is committed to when it comes to employing youth. Last year we employed over 650 youth in different jobs. Jobs can range from being an apprentice to a carpenter for 3 months to working in a supermarket to working with me. This year our politicians want to increase that to 700 youth. So last winter, when it was very cold, very dark, I wrote this little book, the Toolkit for Engaging Youth, or the Handbook for Engaging Youth in Urban Agriculture Jobs. How do we do it? These youth come to me not interested in gardening, not caring about their green spaces, and not even liking vegetables very much. So how do I get them interested and engaged in their job? How do I make this a meaningful job for them? And how do I get them to actually be helpful to me? Okay, so the rig of this project is important. I want to emphasise again that it's critical to have somebody who's employed full-time, like me, to do it, but in summer I need help. I need another person like me with horticultural farming skills and also some youth work skills, if I can get that. And in between us and the groups of youth that we work with, we need some team leaders too, to be in charge of things like ringing them when they don't show up to work, or helping them with their timesheets, all those sorts of things. We work with about 12 youth at a time, so breaking them up into 2 groups. So 6 youth, 1 team leader, and then 1 city farmer over the top of them. Our team leaders are usually students of social work, so very good at what they do. So I've got a bit of a framework for how I approach this, not just giving them tasks of picking up rubbish and planting plants when they don't know what that plant is and they don't know why they're planting it. They don't understand the design behind them. So we're giving these tools to them to understand, to have a lot more of a say in what happens in the public spaces in our city. I use this as a basic framework. I would like to have 4, but it's just better on a slide with 3. So I've slid reflection, isn't it? I've slid reflection into observation. Let's have a look. So I want to get them to understand what they're doing. To do that, I use the amazingness of biodiversity. I explain to them about what an aphid is, how lady beetles love to eat them, what a baby lady beetle, a larva lady beetle looks like, how ants are into that mix. It's amazing how to watch their faces when I tell them that aphids are born pregnant with babies inside them that are already pregnant. They're just like, what is this? Nature, what is it? And so it's one of the ways that I get them engaged. The other thing that I want them to observe continually is their safety. Unfortunately, we have the biggest open drug scene in Europe, in central Oslo. We're working in parks where it can be quite dangerous. So we take safety seriously, but I want to put that safety back into the hands of these youth. Some of the parks we've decided that we don't work in after 11 a.m. It's just too dangerous. We're constantly looking for things in the soil that could damage us, such as needles, large packets of drugs. And we've got plans around that. So that observation, not just having, some teenagers there going, okay, I'll just dig and then put this in here. We've got to approach the work site as professionals. So teaching them about how to be professionals in that means that they can take care of their own safety. So observation of biodiversity, observation of safety. And at the end of the day, every day, we sit down and we have a meeting. We meet about what we did, or we write down what we did that day. We write down also how the people who are using our parks interact with us. What did they say? What questions did they ask? And what did the teenagers or the young adults think about that day? What are their reflections on that day? How can that turn into them creating their own work plan for the next day. I don't every day want the plan to just come from me. So I want them to be inspired. Yes, this is a summer job. Yes, this is how they get their money in their pocket to have a fantastic summer. But I want them to be inspired by what we're doing I want them to be inspired to have a career within what we call in Norway the green shift. So I introduce them every Wednesday to a new area of Oslo, a city planner or a city farm, or the recycling station, the composting station, a landscape architect that is working on one of their parks that they go to every day or walk through every day. I like it when my pop-up guests have activities for the young people to do. So I want an expert to come in, they're getting paid, they can come with an activity. And for example, we had a city planner come and she was doing a project on mapping all of the shortcuts through city parks. And so she got them to draw the shortcuts that they use. And then we also worked on improving those shortcuts, building plants around them, re-graveling them, that sort of thing. We visited farms in the city, so we have several, about 6 I think now, community-supported agriculture farms in Norway with about 100 members each, where people get all of their organic food during the growing season. So they've worked on some of these farms, been introduced to the farmers and understood how difficult it is to be a farmer. But some have said to me that they've also been inspired to join these farms, be a member there and get their food from there. I love it that they've gone from, I don't eat vegetables, to maybe I should join an organic farm. It's pretty nice. How do we not just tick the box of ownership and say we're giving them the power to do this, but not really giving them all the tools and the means to do this? So what I do is constantly, every day, get them to realise that they have lots of rights at work. It's Norway. They've got lots of rights around work. They've got the right to be safe every day. They've got all these other rights. They're in power. They're my colleagues. So my young colleagues, I have to constantly build their self-confidence. That's an active act on my part. And the skills that I'm imparting, again, the reason behind the skills, behind the design. Instead of saying, I want you guys to plant these plants, they need this much space between them, I say, here's the list of plants that we have. What would you like to plant here? The parameters are, this tiny plant will be this big, and it needs this much space. Go for it, make a design, and also think about how people use the park. So we survey how people use the parks. That's back in observation. But with that surveying of how people use the parks, it means when I say, okay, now you've got to run an event as part of your job, you have to run one event in one of our parks. If they have the tools of what could that be. So what do they even do? I mean, in spring, it's still very cold. Last year, we rented a container for about 5 months, and we turned it into a greenhouse. We grew all our small plants there. This is on a street that we've closed off to cars, and it worked amazingly. It became a hub for the rest of the summer, where people, residents, neighbours could just drop in anytime, speak to the young city farmers, and where the young city farmers would have exhibitions in the window about how to deal organically with aphids, with powdery mildew and things like this. Loads of things they do in summer, of course, but I want to not just tell you the practical planty things, you guys might know that, but they also work with a communications expert and understand how to do interviews with journalists. They invite politicians down and the newspapers down to see what they've done. Really makes them proud of what they've done, because they've transformed these parks. We put electric tools into their hands for the first time. This is a young woman named Ikram. This is her first time using a drill. It was incredible. So in autumn and winter, we've now expanded to also employ some youth, not as much as in summer, a bit less. It's a part-time job after school. But that's when we decided to grow these mushrooms. So they're grown on the street. The food that we grow is harvestable by anybody. And the students, my young colleagues, make signs telling people how to harvest, when to harvest, and what they can do with it afterwards. And in winter, we've got them doing some Christmas markets. Here they are making seed balls. We thought the kids would be really interested in that. They're not, it's the adults. They really loved it. So one thing we did for the first time in 2022, instead of just focusing on our vulnerable insect populations within the city centre, we expanded to other small animals. And this was actually came out of a young man who was not particularly interested in the job at all. I heard him mentioning to a young colleague when we were walking past a space in Åkerberg, Bayern, that he had seen some hedgehogs there at midnight last night. And I thought, let's survey how many hedgehogs we have in inner city Oslo. It turns out we have quite a few. And so we got a recipe on how to do this from community groups in the UK. I found it online. They built these little cardboard tunnels and put in some ink and then counted every day how many hedgehogs we were getting in the tunnels at night. Cats can't fit in, rats can, but you can see the difference between a rat footprint and a hedgehog footprint very easily. I'll leave you here with Una, one of our young farmers, who will explain to you how to then build a house for hedgehogs. Let's see if the video plays. No, not automatically.
Vi er Unge og jeg er Una. Og vi har bygget et pinnsvinhus. Pinnsvinhuset har en tunnel på 13 ganger 13 cm, slik at bare dyr på størrelse med pinnsvin kan komme inn. Huset er også dekket av plast, slik at når snøen kommer, så blir ikke treverket vått. Man kan også åpne taket for å se om det er pinnsvin inne i huset. Vi har bygd huset med ferdigkuttede deler, og så har vi skrudd de sammen og satt på hengsler bak, slik at taket kan åpnes. Huset står også på 2 firkanter, slik at det står litt opp fra underlaget. Hvis du har lyst til å bygge et pinnsvinhus, så er det bare å trykke på lenken under.
Thank you very much.
Hei, jeg heter Tong, og jeg jobber som
Okay, we work another try with our video from Carthage. But you could think about a question maybe to Nat also.
Just yell. I was wondering because you talked about...
So a lot of skeptics often say that if we build something pretty in the city, someone is going to come along and ruin it. What are your tactics to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, so I've forgotten the English word for it. Harvark. Yes, it is a bit of a problem. So we do checks on our things every day, fix things if it's stolen, replace it, rebuild it if it's been smashed. But we just take it in our stride. We try and not view it as something negative. But we've also found that when we're really activising a space, such as that car-free space that I showed you before, we had a lot of things out there in the glass container. When it's really being activised, used by as a space that's gone from a road that is closed off to cars and nothing else, suddenly to having lots of seating, lots of plants, lots of things, young people there every day, and keeping it clean also. We didn't have any problems with vandalism, that's the word, with vandalism in that part. So there's other parks where it's a little bit more challenging and we just take it in our stride. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Nat. It was really fascinating. And I'm sure that during lunch break we will have more questions and comments. Let's try, and yeah, if this do not work, we will provide the video and share this with you as well. We try again.
I will start by thanking the organizers of the second international conference held by the Edible Net network in partnership with different institutions of the city of Barcelona, which, according to some historians, was founded around 230 before Christ by the Carthaginian Hamilcar Barca, father of the famous Hannibal. At that time, Carthage still dominated the whole western Mediterranean and was in confrontation with Rome. Slide, please. Today, Carthage is a small city in the northern suburbs of the capital, Tunis. It covers barely 640 hectares and is occupied by about 20,000 inhabitants. Carthage citizens are proud of their history, but also worried about the future of the archaeological heritage, which suffers from the absence of a shared vision and poor governance at the origin of its degradation across the years. Slide, please. Concerning the urban setting, as you can see, the municipal territory is divided into two main areas: the archaeological and non-archaeological zone. The archaeological zone is classified since 1979 in the UNESCO World Heritage List and is represented in yellow on the map. It covers 63% of the total surface of the municipality. Its protection and management, defined by law, are ensured by the Minister of Cultural Affairs via its supervising bodies and the curator of the site, whose office is in Carthage. The municipality has no power over this part of the territory. It therefore only exercises its authority over practically one-third of the communal domain, since 4% of the remaining 37% is occupied by the presidential palace. The communal sector itself is managed according to the law, Article 13, which stipulates the obligation to draw up an urban management plan that respects the principles of sustainable development, integrating environmental protection, social equity, and economic prosperity. But this is not really the case on the field. Slide, please. Indeed, as you can see on the diagram on the right, a social divide well marked by the red line, oriented practically north to south, divides the community into two different socio-economic entities. In the east, from the seafront to the neighborhoods of Amilcar, Hannibal, Birsa, and Salambo, palaces and villas belonging to well-off residents are spread out. The west, on the other hand, is occupied by a disadvantaged population with a high unemployment rate, especially among young graduates. They suffer from rather modest living conditions requiring social assistance. The COVID-19 crisis highlighted by the high vulnerability of the local food system, among other things. Slide, please. It is in this small city site of barely 6.4 square kilometers, whose name has resonated for more than 2,000 years, but which today is under several forms of pressure, environmental, political, economic, and social challenges, that we have committed as a follower city of the Edible network to go down the path of transition towards an edible city. Slide, please. By following the process of the transition pathway methodology, we have developed a comprehensive system that explains the current situation in Carthage. Rooted in systemic thinking, this participatory approach allowed the city team to identify three important points. The first point is related to the lack of relevant and reliable socio-economic data, which required the launch of a specific study on this aspect. The second point, slide please. The second point highlights the vulnerability of the local food system, which is characterized, as you can see in the internal part of this diagram, by complex interconnections between several subsystems. The relationship between the local food system and other urban systems is shown in the external part of the diagram. The third point reveals the existence of a serious problem of governance in the planning and management processes of the municipal territory. As we will see in the following slides, local authorities have limited power over the territory. It is also important to note that the process has been complicated by local and national political instability and has been compromised by the COVID-19 pandemic. These obstacles and many others linked to administrative and organizational constraints have been circumvented by the support of our colleague REACT Association and the great contribution of our partners from Boku University as leader of WP4 and from the University of Brighton for food mapping. We summarize in the following slides the main results acquired during field studies and online meetings, workshops and surveys during the COVID-19 pandemic. These results were synthesized last October during a face-to-face workshop in Carthage, Tunisia. The questionnaires, surveys and direct interactions with the citizens and local authorities have allowed us to identify 10 societal challenges that can be grouped into 4 categories. The first and most relevant challenge is related to food autonomy, meaning we need to increase food autonomy in the whole region. Second, the socio-economic challenges, where we need to stimulate the economy, address youth unemployment, improve social cohesion, and support education and behavior change. Third, the environmental challenges. On this topic, we need to address coastline degradation, improve fisheries, improve water availability and access, as well as water management and strengthening local biodiversity. Last but not least, we need to tackle the challenges related to territorial governance, heritage management, where we ought to address the inertia of archaeological sites and their inhibition of development dynamics. The last challenge will be the one of the institutional responsibility, where we need to promote transparency and accountability of both public institutions and the other actors. Finally, as you can see, each and every challenge is related to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2030 Agenda. Slide, please. Here you can see some examples of relevant existing edible city solutions. Among the pictures you have here, you can see that some citizens of Carthage have taken the initiative to provide food for their families, their communities, through growing vegetables, and among these people we have Mr. Aissam Ben Shaban, who is the winner of the Local Hero and Most Innovative Individual Action Award in 2021. Slide, please. Field studies have highlighted a large extent of green open spaces that could be classified into 2 major categories: public and private. Each of them is subdivided into groups and subgroups according to their land status and their occupations. Slide, please. Here you can see some examples for archaeological open spaces and public open spaces that can be used to grow plants and tackle the food autonomy problem. Slide, please. The search for relationships between the challenges to be met, the open spaces in which edible solutions should be implemented, all seen under the lens of the food subsystems of production, processing, distribution, consumption, and recycling of food residues, has revealed the existence of a strong potential for a generation of agricultural production on the lands of Carthage, as was the case more than 2,000 years ago. The testimonies are numerous and diverse, ranging from the writings of the father of agronomy, Magon the Carthaginian, who left an encyclopedia of 28 volumes retracing the agricultural life and the know-how of the Carthaginians, particularly with regards to vineyards, olive trees, wheat and vine crops, as well as their methods of conservation and transformation. The mosaics and funerary objects found on the site of Carthage provide in turn valuable indicators on the food system of the Punic period. Palynology analysis of organic residues preserved in the sediments of Punic ports have allowed Netherlands researchers to draw up a list of the main foods consumed by the Carthaginians during the Punic and Roman periods. All of this is to say that the project we are leading for the transition of the city of Carthage to an edible city would in fact be a return of urban agriculture and the consecration of the agricultural genius of ancient Carthage. This historical anchoring was one of the most powerful assets to ensure the mobilization of political decision-makers, the adhesion of heritage curators, and the commitments of the inhabitants of Carthage, one of whom is our local hero. Slide please. Taking into consideration all the data we have accumulated, a food map of Carthage has been designed with the help of the University of Brighton. Our work on the first stage of the TPM led to the co-design of the food map of Carthage, the first in Tunisia, with the support of our friend Catherine Bourne from the University of Brighton, who mobilized her colleagues in urban planning, architecture, water management to supervise the Tunisian team in the second step of the TPM, which is the scenario development. Slide please. It is on this basis that we have developed the Edible City Strategy. This strategy integrates three food-focused urban visions: the edible historic urban landscape, the food knowledge networks, and the sustainable coastline. At its core, it has four urban development pillars or concepts. To achieve these goals, we have to address 10 societal challenges. To take up these challenges, we have to realize some food-focused projects and actions. Among these projects, we can look at a local food history tourism program, the protection through planting, fish nurseries, and other projects that can be done. These projects must be done by local stakeholders who can take action and help develop our projects. Furthermore, these projects need to be developed in an open space in the Municipality of Carthage. Slide please. With this in mind, we have invited our partners from Boku University, Brighton University in Carthage for the workshop of Carthage to discuss the three scenarios and to construct a master plan with the commitment of our citizens and to ensure our best chances during the last TPM session related to transfer development. Slide please. During this participatory in-person workshop, experts on national level and local stakeholders were invited to help make Carthage an edible city. Through this enriching experience, we were able to achieve and to develop a master plan for our project. Slide please. This master plan that summarizes all of our goals and our achievements to this date will be further developed and hopefully implemented in many open spaces like schools and some archaeological areas and also on the coastline. However, one question remains. Slide, please. And this question is how to integrate the master plan for the edible city solutions with the PAU and the PPMV. The PAU being the Urban Management Plan and the PPMV being the Enhancement and Protection Plan of the archaeological site. Slide, please. The core of the issue is a territorial governance problem, essentially when it comes to the archaeological zones. The yellow map, if you remember. These zones are supervised by the Ministry of Culture and other government institutions through heritage laws on a national level. Slide, please. On an international level, we can see that the state party is under the discursive and institutional actor-driven influence of UNESCO. It has therefore a duty to the Convention to provide information as it has signed the World Heritage Convention of 1972. Slide, please. Even when talking about the Tunisian urban planning system, we find that the municipality has little power as it is under the direct influence of governmental authorities, such as the Ministry of Agriculture, Water Resources and Fisheries, the Ministry of Equipment, Housing and Territory Planning, and the Ministry of State, Property and Land Affairs. Next slide, please. To conclude, according to recent publications of Wageningen University, we consider that two important factors must be deeply understood and taken into account. First, the role of paradigm, and second, the role of power. When talking about paradigm, Dobnella Meadows wrote in 1999, "A paradigm is the deepest set of beliefs about how a system works and influences its interactions with other systems." Considering this definition and to better understand the governance systems, we need to dive deep, meaning that we must focus on the values, norms, and principles that underline the design of governance processes. It is not a straightforward administrative process, but it requires culturally embedded processes to ensure transparency, reflexivity, and a certain level of agreement and willingness on the policy choices. Concerning power struggles, we can say that it is not only based on unequal access to economic and administrative resources, but is also on disparities in access to information embedded in global flows and networks. Food system, urban planning, and heritage protection consist of multiple subsystems with various feedback loops and connections, involving multiple actors dealing with permanent tensions between stability and change. Their interconnections require in-depth knowledge and deep understanding of their dynamics. The non-linearity and unknown feedback loops of their integration mean that their transformation requires systemic thinking, as well as political economy approach, and flexibility among the governance actors, as well as strengthening governance capabilities through learning and reflexivity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you also for the team of Carthage. Here you see Madame Hayet. Hello. It's
Bonjour.
live. Okay. Yeah,
Bonjour.
bonjour, Madame Hayet.
Bonjour,
She's the mayor. Oui. She's the mayor of Carthage, and Mr. Buba. Hello. How are you? Bonjour. So is there, as we have our colleagues online, maybe we have time for 2 questions and then we go to lunch. Is there something for our colleagues now to ask? Urgent questions?
Sinon, si vous permettez.
Oui.
Milena, je peux parler?
Oui, oui.
Alors, voilà, je voulais dire bonjour à toute l'assistance. Je remercie infiniment donc mon collègue Bouba qui a fait conçu ce travail pour Carthage et son fils aussi qui a fait l'interprète. Et donc là, c'est un travail magnifique. Et bien sûr, je voudrais, moi en tant que maire, mon mandat s'est arrêté, donc c'est le 9 mars, mais le travail scientifique continue avec l'équipe, avec React, avec la municipalité aussi, et avec le secrétaire général. Et donc voilà, nous continuons dans la même voie pour terminer justement, pour finir un peu ce travail qui est magnifique et que nous avons entamé depuis déjà 3 ans. Donc voilà, merci beaucoup. S'il y a des questions, bien sûr, voilà, je suis là à votre disposition. Et mon ami Bouba aussi. Et il y a aussi Madame Lamia et Madame Latifa qui sont avec vous dans la salle et que je remercie infiniment et qui représentent Carthage aussi de façon très importante aussi. Merci.
Merci, Madame Hayet. Somebody wants to translate it. Maybe I can make a try. Okay. So she was, it's translated. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so any question? Come, please.
Thank you. Very inspiring. I have a question. Do you also, because I think you have a quite a holistic approach, do you also collaborate with cultural organization, with artists? Because when it comes to storytelling and spreading the message, did you do that in your research and your work?
D'abord, first of all, I would like to thank Mrs. for the questions. We haven't a chance to work with culture specialists because in Tunisia, when we speak about heritage, there is ultra-conservationism for the heritage. We cannot speak with the holistic approach with the policy maker of culture affairs in Tunisia, because their approach is a silo approach, sectorial approach. They haven't an idea about the thinking systems. Je ne sais pas si j'étais clair, je ne parle pas très bien l'anglais, j'ai ma voix qui tremble, donc j'ai des difficultés pour parler. C'est pour ça que j'ai demandé à mon fils de parler à ma place. Voilà.
Thank you, Bouba. Another question for the team? If not, in the lunch break, maybe Latifa and Lamia, maybe you could stand up. The people that joined the team in Carthage, if you have questions on the development of the master plan, please, take a bit of food in the garden and then talk to Latifa and Lamia, and we will have more interesting insights there. Thank you so much, Madame Hayet, Bouba, that you have been with us. Great work.
Merci et bon appétit à tous. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup à vous aussi.
Merci. So now we have our lunch break. We are quite over time, but we will, I guess we need an hour to, it's okay. So we are then 30 minutes late with the next session, which is in the general plan session 2. We start at 2:30 here again, and then we talk about advancing food systems, transformation through governance innovation. So have a good lunch, and then we see each other again here in 1 hour.